So true. In fact, I remember your visit to IIMUN's headquarters nearly 2 years ago when you had come on a similar occasion, but the audience was a leadership team and the energy you carried in that room. Like, we had a long conference that we had just finished at the Gateway of India, and then you walk in with that energy and everyone's like so energetic. So hopefully we'll carry that energy today also,
Inshallah,
ma'am.
yeah.
But ma'am, I have a few questions for you for this
मैं
conversation that
अपनी
I
बात
have
पहले
prepared.
शुरू करूं?
Ji.
बिकॉज आज जवाहरलाल नेहरू जी का बर्थडे है और हम उनको सब लोग चाचा नेहरू कहते हैं। तो मेरे जो पिताजी हैं कैफ़ी आज़मी, उन्होंने एक फ़िल्म के लिए गाना लिखा था। फ़िल्म का नाम था नौनिहाल, और वो नेहरू जी के जब चिता जा रही है तब वो बज रहा है बैकग्राउंड में, और it captures the quintessential Nehru's belief in the younger generation. So he says, नौनिहाल आए हैं, नौनिहाल are young people, नौनिहाल आए हैं, अर्थी को परे कर दो, मैं जहाँ हूँ इनको जाना है वहाँ से आगे, है ज़मी इनकी ज़माना इनका ज़िंदगी इनकी, अब कई और जहाँ हैं इस जहाँ से पहले, इनको कलियां न कहो, है ये चमनजार सुनो, मेरी आवाज सुनो। तो आप सब लोग जो हैं वो चमनजार हैं, मतलब all of you are gardeners, you are not buds. That's the energy you have.
मैम आपने कैफी आज़मी जी का नाम लिया and my first question was about him. So, ma'am, you grew up in a household where you had, at one juncture, you had Shaukat Kefi ji, who was going around the country with Prithvi Theatre. And then you had, Shaukat Azmi ji, who wrote about Aurat. You had mentioned this to us also before. Now, you grew up in such an environment where, all these things were pretty normal, like they were shown to you. But at that juncture, this was like, ki, Arey, a woman is working or something. But that was not the case at your household. So how did this shape your understanding of equality, of the society at large?
You know, I just took it for granted because we were living in a commune of the Communist Party, which was actually a big flat which had 8 rooms. They were just about 200 square feet. I mean, that's really small, okay? And then a strip of a balcony, which my mother had turned into the kitchen. There were 8 families living there. 8 families were sharing one bathroom and one toilet. One bathroom and one toilet. That was till the age of 9. That's where I was living. But we didn't have any money. The money that my father was earning would be given straight to the Communist Party. So he would get only 40 rupees to look after his children and his household, everything. So obviously there was no money in the house. But what we had in the atmosphere was given. It's a given. Gender equality is a given. Social justice is a given. A democratic space in which children are allowed to express their opinions. All this were a given. So it was ulta with me. It was actually when I was 19 years old that I suddenly realized that what I took for granted, in fact, is the exception rather than the rule. So obviously, by a process of osmosis, I think I picked up from the beautiful atmosphere that was given to me, and most of all, value for the plurality of India and for the diversity and a respect for that, which I hold very, very close to my heart because I think that is the strength of India.
In fact, ma'am, even today you carry that tradition, you carry that teachings of your father where you celebrate Eid also, Diwali also, and Christmas also at your household. Um, but ma'am, you always, right now we spoke of how there has to be a room for creativity and how when you were young, you were given that space of yours. Today, when we have so many students out here, there are, I'm sure, so many of them who would like to pursue a career or become an actor, actress, or even today, when we have content curators who are there per se. Uh, what is that one essential skill set that they should have to take on this world? Because this world is very new, it's fascinating, there's a lot of glitz and glamour, but there's a lot of hard work also behind it.
Belief in yourself and the power to dream. Because in order to fulfill a dream, first you have to desire it. You have to have that dream. And sometimes it's within an easier world because the world that you are inhabiting already has space available for what you've chosen. If you're a businessman or you're a interior decorator or a doctor or an engineer, that space is already there. But the minute you want to become an artist, everybody's antennas get up. आर्टिस्ट क्या होता है यार, ये आर्टिस्ट पता नहीं पैसे कमाएगा कि नहीं कमाएगा. अच्छा, अगर तुमको आर्ट करना है तो पहले तुम इंजीनियर बन जाओ, उसके बाद तुम आर्ट करो. एज इफ दीज आर टू सेपरेट थिंग्स दैट कैन हैपन. आर्टिस्ट बनने के लिए आपको आर्ट में बिल्कुल लीन हो जाना चाहिए. यू शुड फील दैट this is what you want to do more than anything. Because unless you have that conviction that this is what you want to do, how will your parents, how will your seniors around you say that this is a difficult path, it's not easy, so that you will follow your passion through. But everywhere, if you see people who are iconoclasts, who have broken the status quo, are the people who bring about change. So we have to first try and understand ourselves and understand what it is that makes us tick. Not because this is something my father had wanted me to do or this is what my nana had wanted me to do, but this is something that I want to do. In order to understand that, you have to first go inside yourself to understand.
Ma'am, you touched upon a very important aspect that there has to be some support from the family also. You don't do everything that my father wants to do this or my mother wants me to pursue this. 1984, you went on a hunger strike. Around that time, your mother was a little skeptical about it, and she wrote to your father that, see, what is she doing?
No, because I was on this hunger strike for the slum dwellers of Kulaba who had been evicted uh, without notice because an MLA hostel was going to come up there. Now, we had knocked on every door, and the state government had a policy whereby if you evict people from a place which is required for public thing, you have to give them alternative land, which they were not willing to give. That's why we went on a hunger strike. Anand Patwardhan, the filmmaker, myself, and 4 people from Nivara Haq, the organization that I was working. So obviously there was a lot of tension in the atmosphere because nobody knew what was going to happen and all that. And on about the 3rd day, my father, who was in Patna, my mother rang him up and said, you better come here because we don't know how long it is taking and her blood pressure has fallen and I don't think there's going to be an end to this soon, etc. And my father sent a telegram to me saying, best of luck, comrade. And my mother said, "Arey baap re, main kisko kya samjha raha hu?" That is the kind of support that we've had.
So this we have established that you have the dedication, you have anything, because we have a few, they'll also go home. Parents also would see this later. So parent support is something that they'll need. But ma'am, you spoke about breaking stereotypes. Parallel cinema was something that we saw come into picture during Ankur, which was your first film, in fact, with Shyam Benegal ji in 1974. So right now also there's a revolution going on. Things are moving from the big screen to your laptops, your cell phones through OTT. So do you think this OTT revolution is doing the same thing? Like there's space for experimentation, but the content has substance? Or is it just that everyone, including those who are watching the content, who are making the content, are misusing the freedom that they've been given?
Well, I wouldn't say misusing the freedom, but the fact is that they are not occupying the space that was made available to them. When the OTT started, we thought that, okay, so now see how it functions. OTT has a long shelf life. It can take 10 years and you can make up your money. It's not like a Hindi film where you've spent so much money that unless and until the first 3 days are house full, you're going to make a loss, right? So then you have the opportunity to create your own stars. You have the opportunity to create your own writers, people who are trying to make different content. Unfortunately, we have not gone very far in that. And now the OTT platforms are all wanting to play safe and say, let's go with names that are already established. So I think the mandate that they haven't been true to it. But why don't we ask the young people, how many of you watch a movie in a theater? Can you put up your hands? Okay. How many of you watch a play in a theater? How many of you go to a music conference? Classical music conference? How many of you go for painting exhibitions? Okay, so this is a fairly evolved group because I can see quite a lot of hands. But you see, what happens is in art, if you are choosing art as a career and a profession, then you have to realize that artists' resource base has to be life itself. And so you need to expand yourself. You need to read books. You need to go and watch theater that you might not understand, classical music that you might not understand, watch a painting and say, I don't know what this painting is trying to say. But just the exposure to all this adds expands to you. If you're constantly only on your phone and you're only watching Instagram reels as the only form of information you have, imagine if such a huge universe in front of you and you are bringing it down to just those Instagram reels. तो बाकियों के साथ तो आप बेईमानी बाद में करते हैं, अपने साथ खुद करते हैं, क्योंकि you have this huge field and you are not taking that.
You know, ma'am, you've summed it up very well because our attention span also these days has become of 8 seconds. In 8 seconds, if we don't have something new, then we'll lose. Like, there's this thing they call as zoning out. So they're just talking to you, and then they're looking, they're pretending they're understanding. And then you ask them after 3 seconds saying, "Oh, last mein kya bola tha?" And they're like, huh. So you were saying. So that has happened with us fairly with the set of people or my generation per se, that we have lost this. But whilst we see theater, I think that is something that will help not only this evolved audience, but at a audience at large to gain that attention span back, if I'm right in saying that.
You're absolutely right, because अगर आप खाना बनाते हैं ना, तो कौन सा खाना अच्छा होता है? जो धीमी आंच पे बनता है, जो प्रेशर कुकर में नहीं बनता है, जल्दी जल्दी नहीं होती. It takes its own time. So time is very important, you know, because I am an actor, and when I hear that this student has learnt acting in 3 months, I want to kill the student, because I don't think you can learn acting in 3 months. You can't learn acting in a lifetime. I'm still learning after 50 years of being in the industry. So just this arrogance that in 3 weeks, 3 months you can learn acting, ये गलत है. देखिए, रियाज करना पड़ता है किसी भी आर्ट के लिए. टुडे माशाल्लाह Asha Bhosale ji is 90 years old. She does riyaz every single day. Does she need to do it? She doesn't, but she does it. So that is the kind of dedication and that is the kind of commitment you have to give for anything that you want to pursue. Because if you're not going to pursue it right to the T, then you're a failure already. Then don't even go on that path. Don't do half-hearted things. And don't only, it is natural that we are all influenced by our peer group. Obviously, we are. But if you only stick to your peer group, then you're talking about topics that you already are fairly familiar. Put yourself in a situation where you're not in a hurry to talk because you're in a hurry to hear. So put yourself, you know, in different situations. It's a medical conference. Medical conference में क्या बोल रहे हैं? Scientific conference में क्या बोल रहे हैं? Exposure, exposure, exposure. The more exposure you get, the wider your world is.
Yeah, that's very well put, ma'am. In fact, under the guidance of you and the entire board, we've been trying to do this, you know, across the country. For example, today we are hosting a literature festival in a small city. So we won't have a literature-based panel only. There would be a medical panel. There would be an engineering panel also. There's something on live arts also that's happening, so that you give it that overall exposure. But ma'am, you know, there's one thing that you're strongly associated with, your strong voice about women empowerment. There was a movie also, Earth, where you played a role where I'll let you tell the story to the audience. But that also challenged the thinking of the society at that juncture, saying, ये कैसे दिखा दिया आपने theater में, या ये कैसी story, इसका ending बदल दो. So, ma'am, when we speak of all these things, what is your true definition of women empowerment?
asking for equality. I don't think anybody should have a problem with that. You know, there are lots of people who say, "Bhai, I'm not a feminist," as if that's something to be proud of. You're not a feminist because there is a lot of confusion about what feminism is. And they associate it with the early years, the bra burning, the hate men campaign, etc. But that was right in the beginning because we were living through times when women had been suppressed and suppressed and suppressed, and nobody was paying any attention to their demand for change. So they had to do something very dramatic. They had to do something which would catch society's attention. But after that, when the space started being available, it has toned down a lot. So why should you be apologetic about being a, a feminist? My husband's a feminist. My father was a feminist. The male friends I have are all feminists. It isn't defined only by your gender. It's defined by your thought process and how you deal with patriarchy, which is so deeply embedded in our society. Thank you. Thank you.
And you've been challenging that patriarchy since the very beginning, as I mentioned, through Earth, when they came to you and they said, "Iska ending change kar do," because you're showing that a man is coming back and he's apologizing to a woman, and this cannot happen. And if he's apologizing, then he should be accepted. You said no, we'll go ahead with this, and there was a lot of protests also. So at that juncture, ma'am, what were your thoughts, or what's your first reaction to that incident?
Well, the first thing was that both Mahesh Bhatt, the director and the writer, and myself had made the film for this particular end. That this was the end. We knew that she's not going to go back to the man. So when they said it's all very beautiful, but you have to change the end, we said, no, we'll stop the film, but we won't change the end because this is what we believe is what we want to convey. And the film became a huge success, both commercially as well as critically. It got a lot of acclaim. I got the national award for it, and it became a kind of cult film. And so it shows that quite often the producers, the filmmakers are not in touch with how much change audiences are ready to accept. Because they want to play the status quo because they want the lowest common denominator. But what happened during Earth, like I'm fond of saying, is that I had hordes of women walk into my drawing room, not as fans to star, but in sisterhood, expecting me to resolve all their marital conflicts. And I was so frightened because I was a young lady and I hadn't thought of it beyond what I was doing. But that is what made me aware that actors have this strength and this power and this voice to make their voice heard on issues they feel strongly about. And that's how my work with the women's movement started.
तो एक प्रैक्टिकलिटी की बात होती है जब हम, फॉर एग्जांपल, इफ आई गो टू अ प्लेस कॉल्ड एज स्मॉल एज, लेट्स से, टाटा नगर, एंड देयर यू सी सम इशू एंड देन यू कम बैक एट होम एंड यू टेल योर पेरेंट्स, आपको पता है, you know, students out there are facing this, or this is happening, and then why doesn't the government do this, or you do this, and they say ये बहुत idealistic world में जी रहे हो तुम, there's no practicality to it. So whenever we see all these things, how should one manage and hold their ground? Because people out here, all of them are change makers. Tomorrow they would be discussing everything from AI to cinema to World War III. When they discuss all these things, how should they manage all these things? Because today's political and social landscape is very different as compared to what it was few years ago.
But you know, if you look in the world, and if you look at who are the harbingers of change all over the world, it's the youth. It is the youth that rebels, and the youth wants to break the status quo, and the youth wants to challenge and question and want answers. So this is your right. This is your right that you should challenge and you should ask question. If you're letting that go, that power, you're giving up your power. But you also have to choose your battles. You can't start making an issue about every single thing. But मुझे इससे भी ज़्यादा ध्रुव ये कहना है कि if something is upsetting you, What have you done about it? If you are unhappy with the state of the roads, have you called up your corporator? Have you called up your MLA? Have you written a letter? Have you done anything that is your civic responsibility? नहीं. आप MPM में जो आपको मिला, अरे यार कितने खराब हैं roads. आपने उसके बारे में क्या किया है? So let's not just push the blame, but make ourselves active catalysts for change. We have to be active participants, not passive recipients. And that would be the takeaway today for me, for the youth. Be active participants, not passive recipients. The world is an oyster in your hand.
No, this is so true. This is something that Rishabh sir also tells us. For example, if he says that अगर इतने issues देख रहे हो, so call up the MLA, call up the MP to your conference, make them sit in that opening ceremony and ask them the questions.
Write a letter, draft a letter, get 100 friends to sign on it. उनको कोई तो sense of responsibility उसकी होगी ना.
Definitely. So I think
democracy का तो मतलब ही ये है ना.
You've actually come to the exact question that I had for you in my mind. Like it's like you just read my mind, saying, "Ma'am, then there's a question of democracy. कि democracy में ऐसा होता है, democracy का एक मतलब है लोगों के दिमाग में. तो आप उसको कैसे define करोगे? Because people, for them, democracy is just pressing that button and choosing who they elect every 5 years.
But that's not such a small thing. Just pressing that button is not a small thing. You're writing away 5 years of your life. So you have to take that informed decision. It's not, Achha, this is what my father votes for, so I will vote for this, or this is what my friend is doing. You have to learn about the person you are voting into power, because that's for 5 years. But see, firstly, we have to be very grateful that this country is a democracy, because if you see countries which are not, then you know the kind of suffocation that you can feel there. So here you have a right. You have a right to be, like I said, an equal participant. Usme jo hai, phir then democratic spaces are to be formed in which people, according to our constitution, we have a beautiful constitution. All we have to do is look at our constitution and say whether we are following that. If we say in our constitution that everybody has equal rights, irrespective of the class, caste, gender, is that being practiced in our society? It is not. So what are we doing? Now, you're a young man, okay? My son Farhan Akhtar is a young man. He runs an organization called MARD, which is Men Against Rape and Discrimination. And he goes into colleges and he does these concerts, and what he talks is about redefining masculinity. Why is masculinity about physical power? Why is it about six-pack abs? Why don't we redefine masculinity as being considerate, being gentle, being kind? Why? Who has decided that masculinity should be this? We have to redefine it, and it's a young man who's saying it. So that's the message we need to take across. And I think when we're talking about equality, you have to take boys and girls together. You can't say that हम, देखिए, अगर लड़कियों को पावर मिले और वो exactly वही करे जो मर्द कर रहे थे, तो society कैसे बदलेगी? When you get empowered, you have to redefine the very idea of power itself, so that it's about sharing and not about the powerful wielding power on the poor, on the helpless.
At that juncture, it's actually a thought-provoking statement, ma'am, to be honest. So much so that one has to be empowered, but there has to be a lot of factors that have to be looped in. You can't just say कि आज से चलो लड़कियां सब आगे और लड़के पीछे बैठेंगे क्लास में.
But the problem हम में है is we have far more opinion than we have information. We're too lazy to collect information. तो वो Instagram reel पे जो हमको बोल देते हैं बस उतना है हमारे पास patience. तो ऐसे तो नहीं चलेगा ना. You have to be informed. You cannot hold opinions if you don't have the information. तो पढ़ो ना, जानो ना, बातें तो करो लोगों से. इसके बारे में समझने की तो कोशिश करो.
Guys, it was not your teachers, but Shabana ma'am said that you need to read now, so I'll leave it to you. But ma'am, abhi, I'll jump back to cinema once again because we were going into democracy and
मुझे
everything.
लगता है आपको कुछ एक्टिंग से कुछ शौक है और आप कहीं सिनेमा में घुसना चाह रहे हो जैसे इनके सवाल हो रहे हैं डोंट यू थिंक दैट्स व्हाई ही इज लीडिंग
No, definitely,
यू
ma'am.
हैवंट डिनाइड इट
Uh, ma'am, we'll continue.
पकड़े गए पकड़े गए
But yes, ma'am. So Indian cinema on international platform. You know, cinema has been a soft power. It's an art. It's not just a commercial film that you make and you enjoy it, and then that's the end of it. Now, do you feel that Indian cinema is being represented on an international platform well? And you know, at IIMUN we do bunch of things. So these students can draw inspiration from here and become global citizens. Because if I say, chalo international cinema ki baat karenge, then they'll only focus on what's happening at Cannes or what's happening elsewhere. But the regional cinema then would take a hit back. So there has to be a local citizenship, you know, where you have a global outlook also and you are aware of the local things also. So do you think that this is something that one should follow, and is our cinema being represented well currently?
You know, as the world shrinks and becomes a, a village, it is becoming more and more evident that we need to understand cultures in terms of their own paradigms, not paradigms of the West imposed on the East. It can't be a one way street. It has to be both ways. The freedom that we've got should be for cultures that have cross currents amongst them. So, if we want our films to be also internationally recognized. We are internationally recognized in a lot of areas, but if we're talking about Hollywood and stuff like that, then what we need to do is not imitate them. We need to tell stories the way we tell stories. Now, in India, we tell stories through songs. Whether it is Parsi theatre, whether it is Nautanki, whether it's Ram Leela, everything is through songs. Why are we throwing songs away and saying कि नहीं ये अभी गाने छोड़ दो, let them only come as background? That's the way we tell stories. That's the way we should be introducing to the world so that the world also sees a different way of looking at things. If we are going to make the kind of films that you make, so what is Indian about it?
If we follow the Hollywood line or we follow the Western line per se, then we won't get to where we are. There's no originality.
No,
There's no
see,
individuality.
inspiration, you should look all over the world for inspiration. There's no
Correct.
one area that you look for inspiration. But you have to put it through the sieve of your own culture and your own civilization and your own experience of society.
I'll just take one last question before we open it to the audience because you've caught me red-handed saying you want to get into cinema. So I won't ask a question on cinema, but I'll ask you a question on leadership. You know, at IIMUN we've always promoted youth leaders. They need to take leadership roles. So what is that one quality that you would like to see in the leader of the new India?
Decision making. Decision making and not apportioning blame. The leaders, the leader is somebody who doesn't bark and dictate. Leader is somebody who inspires you to give of your best and encourage you and inspire you to also contribute. If you're the kind of leader who just says कि भैया मैं आर्मी जनरल हूँ और मैं बोलती हूँ ये सही है तो ये सही है, that's not the kind of leader we need. We need a kind of young leader who is able to inspire us and able to make us dream of a country we all love and want to be proud of.
Now I have a short rapid fire, then we'll open the house for questions. So basically I'll tell a word and you tell me what comes to your mind first when you hear this. Art.
Wonderful.
Inspiration.
You have to work towards it.
Politics.
It's in your bedroom. You can't get away from it.
Cinema.
Beauty.
India,
Best in the world.
youth.
I have the greatest hope. I have the greatest hope from youth. Because I really do, I do believe that, when we say that ye young are not taking anything seriously, they're only interested in their own lives, etc. I'm sorry. We as adults have failed you. We have not been leader enough to get you involved, to get you inspired. Look at what has happened to Zohran Mamdani, all of 34 years old, and he's New York's. And he had so many factors against him. I mean, there were, nothing was spared in trying to not get him there. But he got it, now. That's the power of youth.
And I'm the last one, but the most important one, IIMUN. When I say the name of the organization, what comes to your mind?
It's an idea whose time should have come a long time ago, but I really, really want to congratulate Rishabh for firstly conceiving this and putting his money where his mouth is. I mean, when he talks about, when I keep telling him, I don't see you, and he said, I'm not young anymore. So I said, "Phir hum kya karenge?" But that idea of being able to harvest and channelize this energy and actually give you positions of autonomy is very, very important. That's the most important thing we can do with our young. And I experienced that in my family. It is a democratic family in the sense that, if any major decisions had to be taken, the children, never mind however young they were, their opinion was sought. Their opinion was asked. And it was not, we are adults, we've decided and you have to do it. The autonomy that you have as a young person should be nurtured, should be encouraged. And from that, we are going to get this new person that we're looking for.
This has been a eye-opening conversation, ma'am.
Thank you.
We touched upon various aspects, but again, I'm reminded as we conclude that true artistry will lie in purpose. There has to be storytelling can be a form of resistance. Movies can bring about change, and when there's leadership, it has to be followed by compassion. Thank you so much, ma'am, on behalf of everyone at IIMUN for taking out time and being with us here today. It's
As
a privilege
always,
and an honor.
it's always a pleasure.
But ma'am, before we let you go, may I call upon Alfia Qureshi, Director IIMUN, to present a small token of gratitude from our end. Alfia?